Welcome to Medium is the Message, the official podcast of the Southern States Communication Association, whose purpose is to promote the study, criticism, research, teaching, and application of artistic, humanistic, and scientific principles of communication, a non-for-profit organization existing for educational, scientific, and literary purposes only. Glad you could join us. I'm your host, Dave Nelson. And if you'd like to contact anyone at the association about anything, for example, maybe our podcast, check us out at www.ssca.net, which has links to all our social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And for this episode, I talked to Wendy Atkins-Sayre, Shawn Long, and Pam Boylan-Davis about the upcoming conference in Frisco, Texas. Dan Grano and Jennifer Samp discussed the Southern Communication Journal and its role within the association, and a segment I like to call Southern Exposure, which spotlights the interesting and the unexpected from towns and cities throughout the South. This time I talked to Richard Norman / Norman Film Studios Executive Director Rita Reagan about the silent film history in Jacksonville, Florida. But first, some news and information. Make sure you check out the spotlight panels tied to the theme of this year's conference, Disruption. Shawn and I talk about them in this episode. We'd also like to remind everyone that the SSCA Resolutions Committee drafts and presents standard and any special resolutions at the convention. These resolutions can be about the workings of the association or conference. Also, the Assembly uses resolutions to honor individuals and organizations that have served SSCA. You can find a list of past resolutions on the SSCA website under Membership area. If you know a topic or a person that needs to be considered in a resolution, please contact Corey Hickerson at James Madison University at hickerca@jmu.edu. Look for a link in the show note. And lastly, don't forget to purchase any Caring Connections, our dual-purpose fundraiser. These purchases help fund the association's awards and provides a way for you to thank those friends and colleagues you've worked with during the last year. In this segment, I talked to Wendy Atkins-Sayre, Second Vice President and Planner for the Undergraduate Honors Conference. I'm getting excited for Southern this year in Frisco, Texas, and you are the coordinator / director for this year's Clevenger Undergraduate Conference. How has that been going? And
it's been great. One of the things that I love about teaching is the one-on-one work that we can do with students, whether they're undergraduates or graduate students. And this is, even though I don't get to work one-on-one with these students, I get to hear the stories of all the faculty and how excited they are seeing their students accepted, presenting at their first conference. So we're just now finishing the planning part. The acceptances have gone out, and now we start to think about these students experiencing Southern for the first time. So it's been great.
I think that's one thing that anytime I talk about why do I always go back to Southern, it's something I've gone back to since I started at Southern Miss down there, and it's an experience that you don't get at a lot of different conferences, and particularly if this is somebody's first conference period, it's a really good experience for the undergrad.
It is. I mean, it's partially the size. I think we're a good size so that everyone can come together at receptions, panels. We see each other in the hallways. And then I think it's just that we're friendly. We'll stop and talk to undergraduates and graduate students and folks from other institutions. I mean, we want to support each other. And I think that's the overwhelming feeling that we get from Southern. That's what I hear people saying when they explain why they come back year after year, even if they don't live in the region. That's still it's a great experience. So,
and how, being that you put this together and you probably saw a lot of moving pieces, but how does this change how you see the role Southern plays in undergraduate research and participating in the academic community at large?
You know, I'm so impressed with the work that I've seen from undergraduates. I know I've worked with undergrads who are capable of this level of work, but when you see all of the papers coming in and the research that they're doing, it's wonderful being a part of that process. And so I think the importance of the undergrad conference is that the students see that they can participate in these conversations. They can make contributions and help us see some of these concepts in a different way. And for some of them, it's a one-time experience and they can graduate and leave knowing they've done it. I think for a lot of them, it's the start of an academic career. I think they start to picture themselves in a master's program, maybe even getting their PhD eventually. And that's a wonderful role that Southern can play.
If someone is going for the first time, particularly an undergraduate, what are some things that they should look forward to? Or what are some things that they should attend or go to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, there's a lot of nervousness, I know, when it comes to thinking about attending the conference. There shouldn't be. Like we've just discussed, it's a very supportive crowd. And so sometimes students can imagine all the hard questions that might come from the audience. If there are any hard questions, they're only exploring the ideas. It's never critical of the person. And so, don't worry too much about that. We are also, this is only the second year that we've done this, but we will have a panel on Thursday afternoon just for the undergraduate honor conference attendees. And it's called something like Preview, the UHC Preview panel. And we have two great alums of the UHC who will talk to students and explain to them the process of presenting the paper and such. Hopefully they have some tips on that before they, arrive in Frisco. But I think it's really nice to come together in one room and talk about what to expect during that panel, how to get the most out of the conference. And I guess the last thing I would say is try to attend everything you can possibly attend while you're there. Go to meetings, go to receptions, go to other people's panels, soak it all in so that you really know what the academic life at conferences is like.
And how can members help out with undergraduate research, or what are things they can do while at the conference, or maybe not even at the conference, before the conference even happens?
Well, I hope that faculty think about this year round. Sometimes we forget, but there are great papers that come out of our classes in the spring semester as well. And so talking to students as early as possible about attending the conference or submitting to the conference would be great. A lot of people even put statements in their syllabi to give students a heads up so that they're thinking about it. If they know students are going, fantastic. And don't forget that it can be overwhelming from a student perspective. And so talk to them early about what to expect at the conference and how to, even little things like, how am I supposed to dress? How do I refer to other people? Those are the things that we forget were scary at some point. But helping them out in that way would be good. And then once you're attending, talk to them. If you see someone who looks like they might be a participant at the UHC, welcome them, ask them about their papers, make them feel welcome in the organization, and then also attend the panels. It's not just for faculty sponsors or the undergrads themselves. Would love to see faculty just popping in and having conversations with those students. It's a real honor to be serving Southern in this way. And I know next year will be more difficult for me as I take on the larger conference planning, but it was wonderful to start the process with the honors undergrad conference and to work with all the faculty sponsors and the undergrads. And so I don't take that for granted. I appreciate that people voted for me, that people trusted me with the organization.
Now I talked to Shawn Long, first vice president and convention planner, about what type of disruption should we expect. Hello, Shawn Long. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for taking time to do this. I know just like everybody else, we just have busy schedules this time of year.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. It's always good to chat with you, and I'll certainly make time for this.
Well, excellent. I like I said, I do appreciate it. Let's just get into it. Southern's coming up here pretty quickly. what are some things you're looking forward to?
But first, I think our theme is pretty fantastic. It's disruptive communication, a discipline without constraints. And I'm excited that this is the first year that we've migrated to an electronic online programming submission and review system. And that's gone off without a hitch. So we started that disruption with the technology earlier on during the last association meeting last April. And we received well over 600 submissions this year. That's both for the regular program as well as the Theodore Clevenger Undergraduate Honors Conference. And so it's peppered throughout the entire program are really cool disruptive panels and papers and presentations that I'm really super excited about.
One of the things that I always look forward to every year is going to be kind of like some of the panels, some of the research, particularly both the undergraduate and research aspect, as well as kind of looking to see what faculty and graduate students are doing. Is there something you're looking forward to in that aspect this year?
Yeah, so certainly we have some really cool programming tied to the various divisions and interest groups. This year, I've invited Dr. Brenda J. Allen. She's Professor Emerita from the University of Colorado, Denver. She's going to provide the keynote speech in its inclusive leadership, which I think is fantastic. I've also programmed 4 VP Spotlight panels as well. So it ranges from disrupting sports, where I've invited a good friend of mine, artist Twyman, who is the Senior Director for Communication for the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to be at the convention, and he's certainly seen disruption throughout his career. He was at the St. Louis Rams when they hired Michael Sams, and he helped oversee sort of the transition from St. Louis to Los Angeles. And again, last year they attended the Super Bowl, so I think he's going to be perfect to engage our membership. And then we have 3 other panels: disrupting religion, disrupting pedagogy, as well as disrupting death. Is all the VP Spotlight panels. So in addition to the regular programming throughout the conference, there's some really cool Spotlight panels and keynotes that I think folks would be really quite interested in attending.
One question I like to ask my guest is, what is the one thing that kind of like, obviously, I sort of say that sounds like some great panels and some great spotlights I think everybody needs to check out. But one thing I like about Southern is it does have the research component is just kind of out of this world, and I always feel like really creatively sparked when I go back to my university afterwards. But one thing I do appreciate about Southern, I mean, I'm going to edit that so it sounds better, Shawn. One thing I to understand is like, what has drawn you to Southern all these years?
Absolutely. So I went to University of Kentucky, and Southern was really our regional disciplinary home. So I've been engaged with Southern since graduate school, since PhD school. And so I've really liked the hospitality, the welcoming nature of the association. So when I took my first job at UNC Charlotte, which is certainly in the South, I continue that relationship. And so one of the things we did when I became a graduate director is that we really wanted to recruit at Southern these talented undergraduate students. We really wanted to promote our program and our department in the Southern program and become an institutional member. We get, you certainly get a great bang for your buck, but it's also because you have so many great colleagues and scholars in training that attend Southern. So I've been part of Southern for so long. And when I was approached to think about leadership opportunities many years ago, I just certainly jumped at the chance because I just love the association and certainly want to support it in any way that I can.
And that jump into the leadership thing is not something to be taken lightly, because it is not only you get to see the benefits, but I've definitely seen when I was in grad school, administrators who were in your position. It's a lot of work. It's kind of it's a big labor of love, and I think people do it because they love the association.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So when you read sort of the job descriptions or the position descriptions of a vice president or finance chair or even president, there's a lot of work that's going into it. But, this is a volunteer organization, so we certainly want to maintain the strength of the association, and it's just been my honor and pleasure happen to serve. It is a lot of work, but it's well worth it.
I think I would like to add too, and what I've noticed, I've not served in those positions, but like there's a lot of good mentoring to get you up to speed on that. They don't just throw you out there in the deep end and go, "Good luck, Shawn."
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So even along, so you're not elected to president, you're elected to second vice president, in which you are sort of incubated the first year, and then the second year you program the undergraduate honors conference, and then whomever is programming in the larger conference really mentors you into not only that conference, but also the transition for you to program plan the larger conference. And so my mentor has been Pamela Borland Davis, who's been just fantastic. And she's provided guideposts and steps along the way. Certainly, I can't say enough about Jerry Hale, the executive director. I have him on speed dial, as have everyone else who's been on this leadership trail. And certainly the program and the convention could not come together without the expertise of Janet Fisher, who is with Conference Direct, and she has just been fantastic in helping us maintain a consistently strong convention and conference, but also making sure that we are getting the best rates and best bang and best benefits for the members. So it's just a fantastic regional association.
Excellent. We're kind of winding down here. Anything lasting thoughts or ideas you'd like to leave everybody, Shawn?
Yeah, so I hope everyone will come to Frisco, Texas. This is our first time in Frisco. The hotel is fantastic. It's the Embassy Suites Hotel and Conference Center. It is a modern hotel. We have free breakfast as well as free manager happy hour every evening. And it's just a really great place to not only see the next generation of talent with our Theodore Clevenger undergraduate program, but also this is a great place to recruit graduate students for your PhD program, as well as grad students for faculty positions. So it's just I think a well-ran association. The conference is exciting. We're going to disrupt in Texas as much as possible, and I look forward to seeing everyone, friends, colleagues, and family in Frisco.
Association President Pam Borland Davis and I talk about what we look forward to this year in Frisco.
Southern, just around the corner. What type of things should people be expecting, looking that you got cooking or in the works?
Sure. We have a number of events going on. Of course, Shawn Long has planned the conference around the theme of disruption. So we're really excited about all of the opportunities there. And it's a nice segue from last year's conference, which I planned, which had a lot of different panels on crossroads. So we looked at some of the events in history, especially in Montgomery. So this next one, we get to take that even further in terms of disruption, whether it's to a field of study, whether it's communication in ways that affect change. And so it'll be exciting to see all the different panels that people put together.
What are some of the highlights you look forward to every year when it comes to Southern?
When it comes to Southern, I enjoy, first of all, it's a family. It's an academic family. So I get to get together with people I may only see once or twice a year, make new friends. And I think with Southern, we're smaller, and it's small enough that you're going to start knowing people very quickly, but it's large enough that there's always new people to meet. And then I think I also, I look forward to hearing what people are doing. So of course, it's an academic research conference, so we get to hear about different ideas and studies that are ongoing. Some people are presenting research that's already completed. Some scholars are highlighted. And then on the other hand, we may also get to see glimpses into research that's coming up that people are getting into. So it's really a nice chance to see a lot of different things from a lot of different communication disciplines. And that's one of the other things I think I would say that I really enjoy about SSCA.
It's just the wide variety of.
Absolutely. It could be popular communication, it could be mass communication, public relations, rhetoric, performance works, interpersonal, intercultural. There's so many different divisions that our research and communication fit within, and it allows us to see what other people are doing. So if I have a study in health comm, for example, I might go to the applied communication division, and then I will see what other people are doing that's very similar. And it helps my research and then helps me bring things back to the classroom.
I think that's something that I overlook, and I would imagine a lot of people don't, is like, get out of your comfort zone, go into the other fields you're talking about. Where's the research going in there?
Exactly. And it's easy to say I'm just going to stay in my own division and just go to these things. But I think I've enjoyed so many different things. Town hall debates that we have are often a lot of fun. And so we get to see that. And of course, presidential and vice president's panels get to highlight some of these things. And then it's also fun to go see what the undergraduate students are doing as well.
Do you have the president's panels lined up, or is that still in the works at this point?
I will have one, and I'm still working on it. But basically what we will be looking at is the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote. But I want to, in the spirit of disruption, continue that by looking at the continued struggles for voting among other groups, the civil rights movement, et cetera. So that's the panel that I'm working on building right now.
Most excellent. Is there anything else you think anybody needs to know about, or any final points you have there, Pam?
About Southern, I think we had a meeting at NCA, so we always catch up there and make sure business is moving forward. I think Frisco is going to be an exciting, different kind of venue for us. And we had 2 ad hoc committees, one on ethics and one on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm excited about some of the things that we're bringing forward. The ethics committee will have an ethics statement that will help guide our research and submission processes. And then the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee will be looking at a couple of things, ranging from creating that ad hoc committee and making it a standing committee to identifying whether it's time for us to have a standalone division in that particular area. So we'll be asking for members to weigh in on those things.
Excellent. Again, thank you for taking time, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you this year in Frisco.
Absolutely. If I don't see you before then, I will see you in Frisco.
Well, most definitely.
The Southern Communication Journal plays a huge role within the Southern Communication Association, and I sat down with Dan Grano, committee chair, to talk about what should we be looking forward to when it comes to the journal.
Talking to Dan Grano from the Publications Committee.
How you doing, Dave?
I'm good. And what can you say about what direction the publications at Southern's going in right now?
So I feel like, at least since I've been in the association, that the journal has always been developed and fostered as a space for all the sub-disciplines that are represented by the association. And that changes a little bit editor to editor, of course, and depending on the vision that the editor has in mind for the journal. But like the other regionals in NCA, the journal at its best, which I think all of our editors have made sincere and admirable efforts to do, represents the diversity of approaches and interests and perspectives in the association.
And so what direction do you see that going in? Is communication becomes a more widening field with more interest grow? It's still a relatively young field in academia?
Yeah, I think that, of course, so much depends on the particular field of research we're talking about, but I feel like we're converging around right now a lot of problems of social justice, what the meaning of communication is at a moment when some of our older notions of reason and persuasion don't seem to be in need of updating given our political and social context. And so I think we can converge around some common questions about the condition of our culture, condition of social inequity and things like that. But we're of course going to tend to come at that from very different perspectives, theoretical frameworks and so on and so forth, depending on what part of the discipline we're located in.
And what role, I'll edit that. So what direction do we see our publications going in the future?
So, I think that we've often left a lot of that kind of agency to the specific editor that takes over the journal. But I also think that we have an expectation for editors to do their best to frame their vision for the journal within the framework of what the association does in its work.
Anything we should be looking forward to with the journals and publications?
I don't know if anything specific, as far as future special issues and things like that. But I think that we can continue to encourage special issues that editors feel either include areas in the association that need to be included in the journal or address pressing questions that communication is uniquely equipped to address.
Jennifer Samp, editor of the Southern Communication Journal, also sat down with me to discuss its role within the association.
One of the things we're focusing on this episode is what is the role the journal plays for Southern?
So the journal is obviously the written document, but also in a lot of ways the face of the association because of the nature of the articles that we publish and the authors that we spotlight. It gives a voice to this region in a lot of ways, but then also is branching out internationally if you look at the readership. So there's a lot of access to the journal so people know more about the association.
What do you think it makes the Southern Journal unique as you compare it to the different regions and also even to the national ones?
Well, one of the things about a regional journal, in particular in the case of Southern Communication Journal, is that it's very diverse in terms of its content. So there's not one singular focus. So we run the gamut from every single type of methodology and every single different perspective in the communication discipline. So in that way, it's a challenge at times to put the articles in the journal together because it is so broad and it is so diverse. There's similar themes related to the other regional journals as well, but Southern seems to be a lot more broadly focused, and I've been trying to push that broad focus under my editorship.
So I guess that leads into what I would ask next. So what direction do you see the journal going under your editorship?
One of the things that I really sought to do was to make sure that there was accessibility in terms of awareness of all the multiple perspectives of communication. I am not a rhetorician. I studied rhetoric, but I'm not a rhetorician, and so I did not go into this editorship saying, all right, I'm going to completely change the focus of the journal. Rather, I wanted to broaden it. So my editorial board, as it's growing, also helps me out with some of that feedback too. So the editor can't be an expert in everything within the communication discipline, but my editorial board is great, and they give me a lot of feedback.
And what do we have to look forward to from the journal upcoming? Any special issues? Anything?
So we have a special issue on microaggressions that was edited by Tina Harris that's coming up, that's going to come out by the end of this year. And she's put together a group of scholars that have been focused mostly on racial microaggressions. And our second special issue is probably going to come out early next year, and it's edited by Lindsay Aloya from University of Arkansas, and it's entitled Uncoupling. So it has a focus on close relationships and the dynamics related to conflict in close relationships, and also when things go well and when things don't go well at all. So I do think that the journal has had less of a focus on interpersonal articles in the recent past, and so I'm very happy to see that special issue coming out.
Anything else you'd like to say about the journal and what's going on?
I think the journal is growing. I think the journal has lots of opportunities, and as the association is growing and there's more awareness, I think the journal is getting stronger. We are also reducing the acceptance rate for the journal, so it's becoming far more competitive than it was years ago, and it's getting on the radar of people within the discipline, so I'm very pleased to see that.
And for this episode's Southern Exposure, I talked to Rita Reagan, who is a founding member and current executive director at Norman Studio, which works for the preservation of Norman Studios and is passionate about saving Jacksonville, Florida's place in history as the winter film capital of the world.
From 1907 to 1919, Jacksonville was the winter film capital of the world. That was that interim. Mm-hmm. Then all of that sort of fell apart. Richard came home. He was actually from the area, and he bought this studio from the Eagle Film City people and started making race films. He had gotten turned on to that in Chicago area where he saw Michaud films. Mm-hmm. He brought his young wife, installed her upstairs, and they started to make films. The most remarkable thing about this is those 1921, 22. Richard didn't go into this because he was a big integrationist or anything like that. He was a businessman, and he saw a market that was available, which was the black community. But he was a good man, and as he got more and more involved, he became much more of a message person. But in the beginning, he didn't want to do message movies like Michaud and a couple of the other people, because as a white guy, he didn't feel like he could tell the black story all that well. So he made adventure films. And because everybody loves a little bit of escapism now and then, his movies were extremely popular among these black audiences, because sometimes you do get a little tired of being preached at.
Right.
So the first one was The Green-Eyed Monster, which was a remake of a white movie that he'd been making in many cities around the Midwest and South. Then the second one was The Bulldogger. The Bulldogger was inspired by his having seen a rodeo in Chicago area with Bill Pickett, who was an unusual character because he was a black cowboy. And an interesting story. I could tell you that and how that all came about and what happened with that. But in the end, he made 3 different westerns in the Oklahoma area. Oklahoma was fascinating because it had many little black townships from before and then after the Civil War. So Richard's next movie was a movie called, and it was made completely here in Jacksonville, it was called Regeneration. And it was filmed on the St. Johns River here, that movie that stood in for many, many places. Mm-hmm. And it was about a young couple goes off on their yacht and gets shipwrecked and then accosted by pirates. And that film, that poster, is in several museums around the world as an example of colonialism. That's kind of a strange thing, but anyway, because of the lasciviousness of part of the text. In Boston, they didn't want it. We called it Banned in Boston. They did finally work it out. Richard's biggest movie, and the only one still in existence, is The Flying Ace, which was inspired by Bessie Coleman. Bessie Coleman had just come back from France, where she had to go to get her pilot's license, and she had returned to her home area in Chicago, and she saw the Bulldogger movie. And she says, I want one of those. I want my story told that way. And so she contacted Richard. They started working on the plan to do the one. She came to town. She was coming to town with an air show, which was commissioned by the Clare White Mission here. Mm-hmm. And so the day they were supposed to start filming the day of the thing, but the day before that, she was flying and in sort of a rehearsal type of thing, and she was bumped out of her plane, and she fell to her death, and the plane crashed too. Anyway, here we are with Richard, and he has started building a Curtis Jenny aircraft, because that's what she flew. And he doesn't have a heroine, he doesn't have a movie. So he has to quickly revise everything. And we don't have proof, but we think he modeled him after Eugene Bullard, who is a bona fide for World War I flying ace. And he's from Georgia, a little town, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly what town it is, but it's just across the border. So that all, of course, took place in 1916, 17. And we don't have proof, but he's so much like him. And so we think that Billy Stokes, who's the main character in Flying Ace, is modeled after him. Two of the things that I think are most important about Norman Studios and why it's important enough for the city to invest another $1 million in it, that they've probably got it'll be about 3 by the time they get through with this remodeling of the studio, is it's a National Historic Landmark. And the reason for that is it's considered a civil rights site because of the race film. But not only that, it was because of the relationship that Richard had with the actors that came here. There's a number of interesting stories, but the best one is the guy that was in every single one of his movies, every single one of the black movies. His name was Steve Peg Reynolds. He had one leg, and he grew up in La Villa, which was the black jazz. It was the entertainment area of the city. He was a vaudevillian, and how they got together we don't know exactly for sure, but he traveled with him everywhere and was in all the movies, and it's hysterical. He is so good. But the other thing that they did, here's Richard the white guy trying to get the black theater owners to play his movies. So he took Peg along with him, and he did a little ballyhoo like he would do in the vaudeville to attract the audiences. But he also was a bridge between Richard and the black theater owners. So they traveled together all the years they were making feature movies, even when Richard stopped making them in 1929 because the talkies came in. Edison raised his ugly head again and put the sound directly onto the film. And he had invented a machine that did talkies, $6,000 a piece. And they were doing fine. But unfortunately, when this simple, easy way happened, then he was left with stock and he just went out of business. But he continued to make commercial type films, and Peg would still travel with him. I've always wondered, what did they talk about? It was kind of a reverse Driving Miss Daisy, you know?
Yeah.
What did they talk about? And how did they keep from getting killed? Because this is a rampant period for the Klan.
When you look at like the history of film, particularly in the silent film area, it's very it seems to overshadow what happened down south, particularly here in Florida. I mean, Jacksonville was queued up to be a film capital. You know, it was like Hollywood before Hollywood took over. Why do you think that gets slept on? Why do you think that gets overlooked? Is it just because a lot of these films are because they were the stock they were made on is no longer available, and so we don't, as they say now, if I can't see it, it didn't happen.
Well, I'm sure that's a lot of it, and everything got bigger and brighter and more, huge productions and so forth. And most of the filmmakers that did, especially race film, were small itinerant guys. They were one man shows in a lot of cases. Students that have interviewed me before, they always ask, what happened? Why wasn't Richard recognized? Why isn't he recognized now in anthologies and so forth? I think no film was being preserved for a long, long time. Lots of it was disappearing. This film was made on nitrate film, which was easily combustible and had many bad things happen because of the equipment and the film itself. And it just deteriorated if it wasn't kept under perfect conditions. So that was one thing. Then you've got an anomaly. Richard doesn't fit. He is a white guy making black films. So he was forgotten up until probably 20 years ago, just like silent film was not very popular up until maybe 30 years ago. Shoot, they just started preserving the new films, the spectacular ones just recently. Richard would probably be forgotten completely except for a few footnotes in books, but the family gave a copy of the Flying Ace to the Library of Congress, and the Library of Congress restored it and it's now being circulated in the 35 millimeter format. And they also made DVDs of it. So those are available to lots of people now. And people see the artistry that he did. So there's quite a revival going on of him. And they're a lot of fun. Michaud's films are wonderful, and he's the father of race film. Now, going back to your topic, though, is why did the South? The South was so romanticized in lots of movies. And, of course, race film itself was a reaction to my mind did
like the standard times of what was actually going on.
The Griffiths' Birth of a Nation.
Yep.
And of course, it's still being used because of its technical expertise in this field. It's still used in film school, so that's perpetuated. But you think of all the films that are sort of mini versions of it that have been made over the many, many years. Gone with the Wind is one of the most egregious ones, of course, but it's not as, it's a really romanticized rather than the ugliness of it. But I think it's so many different factors that have kept the whole issue. And frankly, not everybody loves silent film.
Where can people go find out more information about?
The website is www.normanstudios.org.
As we're winding down this episode of Medium is the Mean, I'd like to thank everyone who made this podcast possible at the Southern States Communication Association. Those who took out program ads, all the sponsors of the Undergraduate Honors Conference Breakfast, and this year's institutional members. The Alabama Communication Association, Arkansas State University, University of Central Florida, Clemson University, College of Charleston, Columbus State University, Florida Atlantic University, Furman University, the University of Georgia, Georgia Southern University, Louisiana State University, the University of Memphis, Middle Tennessee State University, Millersville University, the University of Montevallo, North Carolina State University, Ohio University, Old Dominion University, Purdue University, Sam Houston University, the University of South Florida, the University of Southern Mississippi, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, the University of Texas Arlington, the University of Texas of the Permian Basin, Texas State University, Texas Tech University, Valdosta State University, Virginia Tech University, Volunteer State Community College, and Western Kentucky University. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, a comment, or a suggestion through the Southern States Communication Association social media outlets, which all can be found on www.ssca.net. Till next time.